So I have experienced the city. I grew to love it. This is the city where I learned how to drive. It's the city where my firstborn was literally born. For that reason, this particular city holds a very, very special place in my heart. My decision to come back to Cape Town was also not intentional, but I will say that because I have lived here before, there's a tendency to compare the place or the experience to the experience that you had before. I think the danger of a city that is so western, or rather feels so westernized like Cape Town, is that it can create sort of limitations in our heads of who we think we can be, because you just don't see other people who like you doing those things. Cape Town is an incredible city if you are social, if you want to be outside, if you have an adventurous spirit. Hi beloveds, welcome back to my channel. Been a minute. It dawned on me that we have been back in South Africa for almost a year, which is crazy to even think about, because it doesn't feel like so much time has passed, but also so much has happened in between that it feels like we've actually been back for much longer. You can see from the title of today's video, I'm going to jump straight into it. We're now living in a different city, and are also going to be moving again to another city, but that's a video on its own. And it's the perfect time to reflect. What have we grown to love about the city? What haven't we really liked about Cape Town? And would we recommend that anybody moves here? Well, I'm going to give a bit of context. I studied in Cape Town and started my career here. So I lived between 2012 and 2017 in Cape Town, so 5 years. University, beginning stages of my career, and left not because I intentionally wanted to move. Although the move was timeless, it wasn't something that I set out to do. I know there's a lot of people who study here and then they strategically plan to go and work elsewhere. That wasn't the plan for me. I was perfectly positioned within my career. I wasn't 100% happy at the time with my career. There's another video which details this, which I'll probably link here. Yeah, I didn't have any motivation to leave. I'd experienced sort of my first years as a proper adult here, that freedom, you know, accessibility of places and things, first time making a living, being able to do my own things with my own money, and really got to enjoy Cape Town. So as far as the social scene is concerned, I feel like I really enjoyed it during that chapter of my life, those 5 years of my life. That's when I really was in my most adventurous era. I had, you know, this youthful spirit. A lot of us in university who had studied together were now finally out of university. We're able to do things that we couldn't do before. A lot of places were accessible to us that weren't accessible before. So I'm giving this context because my experience this time around is very different, and for many different reasons. So I have experienced the city. I grew to love it. This is the city where I learned how to drive. It's the city where my firstborn was literally born. This is the city where I met some of my lifelong partnerships and friendship and sisterhood. It's where I formed some of my most meaningful connections, and for that reason, this particular city holds a very, very special place in my heart. But I think I haven't really been able to shake off how I relate to Cape Town. So I've come back over the years for like work trips or visits, and it always felt a little bit like I'm here for a good time and never really here to settle or, you know, grow in a different way. And so when I left in 2017, I left to go and work for GIZ, where I worked for a long time, and then got to experience Gauteng in a different way. And I think over the years, it became very clear to me that that was more my kind of city, for many reasons, which I'll get into this video, and maybe others as well, because that's where we will be moving back to. Story for another day. And please let me know if you actually want to know about that transition process. Maybe I'll do a deep dive into that, why I'm now motivated to go back, how that even happened, how we're navigating that with the kids. But yes, so then I moved to Gauteng, and from Gauteng went to Germany, and now I'm back. My decision to come back to Cape Town was also not intentional. I was looking for work, as you do when you're abroad. something we don't talk about a lot as people who have been expats elsewhere is that the reintegration process, the job search, finding your balance, feet, identity, all the stuff is a very difficult process. I think I definitely thought that the job search would be much easier upon return. I had been a little bit prepared for the fact that it might not be, because I have facilitated exchange programs before, but I didn't anticipate how difficult it would be. And so because of the difficulty and the fact that I'm a mom and there's a responsibility to having to obviously earn a living, and there's a different way of approaching the job search process when you have two dependents. There's an urgency attached to it. Perhaps you might not be as picky with opportunities, but I also will not pretend. I've also been very fortunate. The job that I did get was also perfectly fitting, and it just so happened to be in Cape Town. And so I found familiar city, I know this place, I have family here, why not make a return? It might also be good for us to move back to another city and sort of have the opportunity to start over. And thank goodness for family. Thank goodness for the soft landing that family and friends provide, because I had a good friend of mine, Umbalis, look at the apartment for me. I had family, pick me up from the airport and help me settle in before moving into the apartment. And these people and many others have sort of held our hands through the reintegration process. But I will say that because I have lived here before, there's a tendency to compare the place or the experience to the experience that you had before. And I'm in just a different era. I'm obviously now a mother of two. I'm a bit older, like 5, 6, 7 years older than the time when I left. I have different priorities. I'm not as adventurous as I used to be. I have, a lot more days that I just want to spend doing very little, spending time with my kids, being present for that, but also being present for myself, which looks very different than like 24-year-old D who was outside like every weekend and going out. And I just have a very different experience. So Cape Town is an incredible city if you are social, if you want to be outside, if you have an adventurous spirit, then 110% can recommend the city. It's relatively small in size. Most places are quite accessible, whether that be distance or actually like financially, accessible, affordable. If you are in town, there are specific streets like Long Street, obviously that's the popular one. Bree Street, which is just above Long, which have a long string of restaurants and bars. So you can literally just spend the night or the day in one particular place and enjoy yourself and have various different experiences, whether that be live music, whether that be good food, or just a good old clubbing night. Outside of the typical clubbing popular scene, there's so much to do within nature around the city, and it's also accessible in terms of distance, and most of it costs nothing, if at all, very little. So people who are explorers in that sense, or Dora the Explorer, there's a lot of that outside. You can go hiking, can go running, and then obviously on the outskirts you have wine farms, you have yo Pompey, hello, you have wine farms, you have a bunch of smaller cities. Yes, Pompey, what's wrong? On the curva. Yes, Pompey. You have a bunch of towns, whether that's up the west coast. We recently went to Langaban, which is west coast side, about an hour away from Cape Town. And I mean, you can drive even further up. There's a lot of other smaller little towns. So, and then in the opposite direction, you have the wine farms, Paarl, and Stellenbosch. There's a lot to do, and all of these are sort of within an hour radius, maybe 2 hour radius from the city. So it's a city where I honestly think you can't run out of things to do. And it's, they've got things to do for families, things to do for, people a little bit more youthful and adventurous in spirit. And even if you just want to do things solo, I think there's so much to do on your own, or experiences that are packaged in a way that is quite nice even to do on your own and explore on your own. So it's a really, really good city in that sense. A lot of people compare it to cities like Venice, the cities that are really packaged for tourists. And I think it's very evident in Cape Town. It's a similar thing. It's a similar experience where there's always something to do outside. But I guess the con of the social scene in Cape Town is that it can be incredibly difficult to infiltrate it, to find your circles, to find your people. I have never experienced it to be difficult because my entry, into the city was through university, and I already had a social, I guess I was rooted in that sense through my university friends. And so once we got out, it wasn't difficult to make other connections through those friends or otherwise. However, if you are moving here as an adult, that can be a bit more tricky. People are quite rooted in their friendships and their circles. I think once you get to know people, then it becomes easier, but it's the getting to know people process that can be quite tricky. So I guess that's the other side of the coin of the fact that the city is so social, or rather it encourages you to be outside and do things, and it really feels like you're on a long-winded adventurous vacation, if that's your vibe. If not, also great. So that, I think, would be the other side of the coin, that it can be quite difficult to make friends. I don't really know if it's just a predominantly Cape Town thing, or if that's just an adulthood or an adulting thing, that the older we get, the harder it is to find new friends and make new friends. Then when you're making friends in your youth, it's rooted in different things. The priorities are different, and often we are far more settled in who we are, and so maybe our tolerance also for people changes. And I think just one of those things that we all experience as adults. So I don't know if this has anything really to do with Cape Town, but a lot of people do say this. It has not been my experience though. I made a conscious decision not to buy a car upon return because there were so many financial commitments, and I didn't want to be reckless and just purchase a car out of pressure, or not feeling like I'd be able to live some kind of life that is practical with children. And I've never, up until living in Germany prior to that, have always had a car sort of in my adulting. I didn't have to experience motherhood without one. So I think that there was obviously a fear attached to, will I be able to afford my children the experiences that I want to without the car. And then obviously the practicality of being mobile. You need to move around, pick kids up, there's always some emergency. How do you do that without a car? And how do you do it if you're dependent on other forms of being mobile, like public transport, that you can't really control in terms of time and that aren't as flexible? But I think because of the size of Cape Town, getting around with Ubers has been okay and affordable when needed. And there's a very good My City bus, which functions really well, and the routes are quite close to the areas that I need to go to anyway. And then there's family, and for my daughter, school transport and the like. So the city has been great in that sense. It has been really good. Mama! It's one of those livable... It's a very livable city if you don't have a car. It's small in size, affordable for the most part to get around. And that's something that I've really enjoyed about Cape Town. Yeah, I know a lot of people who don't drive, who've never driven, and they are able to live exactly the types of lives that they want to, and potentially save in the process. Thirdly, I have really enjoyed coming back to Cape Town and being able to expose my children to a life that was in many ways very similar to the life we lived abroad. It's very Western in that sense. And in many ways, that's part of the reason why we're leaving. But I did think that the transition back from Germany, Berlin specifically, to a very westernized Cape Town was probably a softer landing, particularly for my eldest, than if we had maybe moved back to Gauteng immediately. Just assuming. I don't think that transition is harder. I just think because of the context that we're in Cape Town, where it is in many ways very westernized and does not feel so much like a typical African city, that was easier sort of for my daughter to make sense of the changes versus if like we had moved back to Gauteng, where the differences would have been a little bit more stark. I think regardless, kids are more resilient and they are able to, adapt. But now that we've been back for a year, I do think that she is far better prepared for us to then move to Gauteng than had we just done that big jump again back from Berlin. This is just me assuming. In many ways, this particular point is one that I struggle with, because I think that's also something I don't particularly enjoy about Cape Town. The westernized, feels like a vacation kind of vibe, filled with tourist type of vibe kind of city. I have grown to love and appreciate the authenticity that comes with other cities such as Johannesburg, where you do see more representation of people that look like myself doing all kinds of things. And that's become very important for me to expose my children to, so that they don't have to feel othered their entire life, or feel like because they look different they can't be afforded certain experiences or dream, want, wish, be, and I think because of the life that I'm trying to give them, they're already going to be in some kind of privileged bubble, and so it helps that their surroundings look like a lot more familiar, I guess, to who we are as Abantu. So that's something that I haven't particularly, or rather, let me put it this way, it's a tension. I think it has been great for our transition back, but it has also in many ways affirmed that it's not my city like that anymore. And it was a city that served its purpose for a certain season in my life, but I do want to be living in a city that feels a lot more like South Africa, a city that is also very vibrant and fast-paced. In many ways, is a city that I guess speaks some kind of prosperity and abundance, and all the good things that I want for my children to know that they're not limited to want for themselves. I think the danger of a city that is so western, or rather feels so westernized like Cape Town, is that it can create sort of limitations in our heads of who we think we can be, because you just don't see other people who look like you doing those things. So that's something that's been a tension point. Has been great to make sense and put words to that tension point, and I always cherish this place and find it extremely valuable in terms of our journey. Will we come back? Who knows? Will we not? Who knows? I think we're very much rooted in this place for many different reasons. And so in hindsight, a year later, it has been the perfect city to sort of slowly find our way back into South Africa. But it's not the city that we want to be rooted in, and due to opportunity in life and all the things, that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to move to a city that makes more sense for us. Maybe we'll take you along on that journey. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. Maybe like the apartment searches or school searches, how we navigate sort of a reintroduction back to Johannesburg, all of the good things. I think I'm just consistently just going through the motions, and this platform has been really good to be able to put words to some of the emotions that I am feeling through this journey. But all in all, Cape Town has been great. I have a different relationship with it now, and I am going to make the most out of the next 2 months of being here. But it's been great, and we are looking forward to moving back. So anyone who's considering to move to Cape Town, give it a shot. I think it is one of those cities that are worth living in for sure. Everybody has different priorities. I think with anything, I would always say don't take the opinions of others too seriously. Make your own opinions, experience things for yourself, and then you're sure about what is for you and what isn't for you. I think there are many reasons why you should move here. I mean, the things I've highlighted here is there's a lot to do. It's a great city to be adventurous, to explore. It's very movable, walkable, accessible. Transport is accessible in that sense. And also it's very Western. It feels like you're on a holiday, and Western in this sense, you just see a lot more people who aren't South African, and also there's a lot more development, which is in many ways considered Western. Conversation for another day. So it's very developed. I think those are great reasons to move here. what you make of that, how you experience that is your own, and I think everybody should give it a shot. So if you get a chance to come here, why not? Hope this gives you a bit of perspective, and hope to see you soon.